Good afternoon, everyone. Sure, everybody hear me okay? All right, perfect. So welcome. Thank you for stopping by. My name is Juan Jimenez. I'm the product strategy engineer. And today I'll be speaking around several ways that AI can make a difference in your business, 6 to be precise. But before I start, I want to share 2 challenges that I had while working on this presentation. One was identifying a suitable use case, one that was relatable to many organizations, primarily because I wanted the pain and the challenges to be relatable as well, but also that it was broad enough that we can find different areas where we can plug in AI, see the benefit, and let it really shine. The other challenge that I had was finding images that were suitable enough to convey the message that I wanted to send out. And I had a couple of areas that I searched for images, didn't quite help. So in the spirit of AI and having AI help us in assisting us in generating content, generating images, I decided to just go ahead and start using AI to build the images that I'll use throughout the presentation. So this is the first image that I generated. I guess it kind of, I presume you kind of get the idea of what I'm going with this here. You see the guy running away from what seems to be a tidal wave of documents. And as you may have guessed it, that person is basically the organization. And that tidal wave, in this specific scenario, is the constant influx of correspondence that an organization receives and they need to process constantly. And it gives you that feeling that the organization just wants to run away from it, precisely because it's a painstaking job. It is super constant, and it is the kind of thing that organization cannot just run away from. It is a highly important aspect of the operation. In many cases, those correspondences, they trigger processes downstream that are highly critical and highly valuable. And also in many cases as well, all correspondences need to be processed as well. So that's my use case. How can we use AI to optimize content processing in the context of processing correspondences? Now, before we go deep into the different processes that happen normally in processing correspondence, let's quickly think about some of the challenges that, in face value, we can identify. Well, definitely we need a way to classify the inbound information coming in, all those communications. We definitely need to understand the context and intent of those communications so we can route it accordingly. Whether there is other related inbound communications, whether there is already work in process that we can associate it to. And as part of processing and working with those communications, users will need to generate additional content. They will need to add notes to the correspondence that they're working on. They might need to do some investigation. They might do some analysis around the information requested and generate responses and reports around that as part of processing the content. And in those cases that are very specialized, they do need to access additional documentation internally, large libraries to support the analysis being done on those. So now to summarize, talk a little bit about a generic scenario. Again, every organization is going to have some variation of this, but to many sense, it's going to be similar. There are many ways, there are many sources of communication that goes into the correspondence that organizations receive. But primarily, we'll focus on the 2 major ones, like physical letters that are received. To some degree, that information, it's scanned, it's digitalized, so it can be further managed along the way. And also email. Both of them, at some point, will reside in a common repository. So the first element that we see here is that we need someone to go over that information. We need someone to verify the information, read it, and classify it. This will be the first step of the process. Why? Because many types of correspondence might be received by an organization. Some of those types are already known, so there might be a process already in place to delegate that information downstream. So that is the first step in the process. Then comes the second part. This is that someone that knows how to handle inbound communication already classified, working on that information. Now, in many cases, it depends on the information associated to it. That user may respond to it, might close it out, it might be finalized. So it could happen that at that point, the job is done. But on other scenarios, that person might need to get more information, extract information from that communication associated to a case, which that case might be delegated somewhere else downstream to be handled more in depth. Now, on other scenarios, that analysis might be even further. They might need to be justified. They might need to reference some information, some official information, to justify whatever activity needs to happen for that specific communication. So in this case, further classification is done, further activity is being done over that asset of information, and the workflow progresses. And this is more on the actual person working on more specific tasks around that communication, especially when information associated to that correspondence may need to be justified. You might need to reference information to either provide more context in order to be managed, in order to be processed later on, and create that communication and generate that communication back and forth with the sender. This might happen depending on the scenario, where some response may need to be provided back to the user, or even a simple acknowledgement that the information was received and it will be worked upon. Now, another generated image. I hope that by now you have gone pretty much through several track sessions, and you have seen some of the capabilities that, for example, Appian provides in terms of AI capabilities. And as we narrate the generic process of processing correspondence, you can see how some of those tools might fit into that process to optimize it and help the workers to achieve work faster. By the way, I love the phrase. I kind of asked for it to be like that robot knows what's about to come. So the actual target use cases that I will be addressing in this process are basically these 6. Now, starting with the first one, which should be the most obvious one, that starting point, that inbound correspondence, we will need to classify it, and we will need to do it as fast as possible and automate it as possible. So that's the first one. The second one, as the initial classification happens, you will already know how some of those correspondences might need to work. So you cannot expect already some information on those emails. I'll focus primarily on emails in this scenario. So another use case that we will address is how do we getting those attachments from those emails and classify those documents as well. And whenever necessary, we can extract content from it so that we can structure the data. Also, that covers the attachment, but also there might be a subject to it. The body of the email itself might have critical information that we might need to index. So identifying key data entities like persons, location, dates, and so forth will be also beneficial in extracting those key elements for the caseworker to manage. And then we'll delve into a little bit of generic AI so that we can assist the workers in order to generate notes, generate acknowledgement, responses, providing information back to the center to maintain them on the loop of progress. And finally, supporting large libraries in order for that deep analysis that may need to happen, assist the user in finding relevant information to back whatever information or whatever activity needs to happen in that correspondence, backed by actual information or official information and the necessary references to it. So starting with classifying, like I mentioned, I'll primarily focus on, in this case, the inbound that we talked about earlier. We're talking about the scanned physical letters that we receive, so we can use document classification for that. And email classification, we'll use email classification for that specifically. Now, I think you might have already seen this process. This is primarily to show how easy it would be to train an AI skill to do the necessary classifications for routing inbound emails. Now, it's as simple as creating a design object, name and description. And from the AI skill, we'll select email classification. And the only thing that we will need to do is have a pre-selected zip file with EML files that are representative of the different emails that you expect to receive as your inbound correspondence. So in this case, I'm basically defining 3 types of categories. Investigation inquiry, I think there's complaints, and another one, I can't remember which one. But this is all you need. You need a suitable set of examples to train the model and let it do the necessary training. And once that happens within a couple of minutes, then you will be able to publish the model and you will have it readily available for you. Now, I can make a judgment call. I can see that the results that I got are fairly good. In this case, I'll make a judgment call and accept the model to start using it. And that's all I need. Now, at this point, remember that we have this initial step. This initial step is classifying the inbound documentation. The inbound correspondence. At this point, now we start to route the communication to very specific use cases. So for that, I'll focus the rest of the presentation to this use case, basically investigation inquiries. And the reason why is that it's a use case that is a good use case to kind of like highlight some of the things that AI can address. And it basically covers the classification, generative information, and all the different items that we recently talked about. This is primarily associated to agencies, the security agencies that will receive notifications, might receive information about suspected activities, background checks associated to cases, which that information gets shared between agencies. And this is the process that it will allow to ingest that information as it comes in. So investigation cases might be already open, or new investigation cases might need to be created. Now, to address the second use case that we identified, some of those emails that we receive in an investigation inquiry, we already know to some degree some of the documents that will be attached. So we can preemptively process those documentations and classify it based on the different types that we already know that we will receive. Some of the documentations might be suspicious activity, background checks, other documentations that we can easily classify. Now, in the case of, for instance, a background check, it's a semi-structured document. We kind of know what to expect from that document, so we can run it through a document extraction so that we can index the information from that background check, and we can get information such as the subject in question. This will allow us to, further downstream, we have that index value that we can compare to make sure whether there is an open case or any other background check, and we can make that correlation. For document classifications, besides just the fact of classifying the type of document, one other good thing that we can do is, for example, taking the suspicious activity, which is a type of document that I'm expecting, but to some degree, they might vary somewhat. There might be a suspicious activity for financial crimes or cyber crimes, for instance. So I can use the AI capabilities to classify documents based on that context, because if I pick a good set of sample documents that has the specific labels that the model will detect, I can classify them between cybercrime and financial, and I can route them accordingly. This requires different specialities, so I'm actually optimizing the way that I can route work. So to go over how I would do this, this is fairly similar to what we did before with email classification. In this case, instead of providing a zip file with EML files, I'm actually providing sample documentation to those categories that I want to define. Now, by default, it requires 10 documents. We suggest that you provide more than 10, maybe 15, 20, to provide a good set for training. And we are classifying those two types of documents for now. Now, I already got the classification of the emails, and I will give you a glimpse now of the application that we have already built, which is the application specifically for investigation inquiries. Now, the first step of that application is pulling an email server, getting the emails and extracting that information into the application. The idea behind it is that users can access it through the Appian platform, visualize the pending emails that haven't been processed, and it's already broken down into the different data elements that we want: the subject, the body, the sender, all the metadata around the email, including attachments. So what we are doing is we are leveraging this AI classification to preemptively classify the attachments so that the user doesn't have to do it as part of the process of as part of processing that email. So this is our application. This is what it will be like the inbound inbox. Basically, those emails have been pulled from a targeted inbox, and the information is already there available for the users. Now, there are several options that the user can do to navigate the request, you can visualize the attachments. And the user at this point will need to process the email. And by doing so, it will need to fill out a couple of required activities. Won't delve too much into this, there are plenty. But one of them is already pre-published, which is basically classifying that document, that attachment that was provided in the email. So that's automatically already done. So basically, you just eliminated the task of the user having to download the image, read the document, read it, and then make an intuitive classification of it. Now, I also mentioned that some of the attachments might be attachments that we can extract information. So for this case, we're going to leverage the document extraction AI skill, and we're going to extract information from a background check. Now, that is a sample background check, just to visualize what different properties I can extract. So it's just a matter of ad hoc, while defining your AI skill, you define the different fields that you want to extract from that document. And this basically allows you to automate the process while pulling that information, bringing it into the system to automatically not only detect that it's a background check, but also do the extraction. So what does that mean? Within our application, now we have indexed data of that document. Now, if we go to the navigation of the different documents managed by the system, and we select on a document, on a background check, we have the information already provided there as part of the case. Now, this has many benefits. You have that value. You can compare that value to other documents, to other index data within your system, and you can create that correlation between identifying whether this person has already a case open or so forth. Now, another use case that we identified was identifying key data entities. So we did the extraction of that document, but there might be some information as well in the request itself, in the body of that communication, in that email. So we can leverage our OpenAI connector system, in this case, to process the content and basically ask for several entities that might be relevant to this case specifically, like is there a person, the name, location, cars, that kind of query. And that will help us in getting a preemptive list of the different, maybe relatable entities that the user processing the email may use. You see on the right, you see the email, and on the middle is the pre-processed entities that were identifying that content. Now, the user has a much better experience in identifying potential information relevant to the case, like who can be the potential suspect, who can be the potential offense, whether there was a car involved, and migrate that information over to actual information of the case. Now, all of those are suggestions, because in the end, there might be some entities that the user don't want, but it basically provides that assistance to the end user to identify and publish and work on that case. Now, another use case that we identify, and now we start to walk into the area of generative AI and how we can leverage, again, an OpenAI connector system to generate content. Now, in this case, there might be some information that was requested, and we need to process a response back to the sender. So we can use the connective AI CSP to feed the context of the correspondence that we have received, also prompt what we want to respond back to the sender, and allow the plugin to generate that initial response to us, basically helping us in typing the whole thing, thinking about how to structure it, and obviously assisted as well. So in this case, we incorporated, as part of managing the email, we incorporated these AI assistants on the side that instead of just going ahead and typing something as a response, we can pre-publish some of the prompts that might be commonly used, but also allow the user to prompt additional ad hoc prompts. So that it provides two things. One, it standardizes a little bit how the user might respond back to the sender, and also it provides the flexibility to the actual worker in the case to provide very specific things around it. So those prompts are associated also with, are joined also with the communication as well, so to have context around the response, and we can generate that draft response that we can use. Again, assisted, the user will obviously have the chance to adjust it as it sees fit. Next one, query content and generate notes. Now, in this case, this is mostly an interaction. With the connected system, OpenAI connected system, we can create this chat-like feature, which the user can request information from the context of the correspondence, and this will be including what was received as a request and the underlying information extracted from that correspondence. And the idea behind it is that instead of going through the whole thing, reading it, accessing the information, it is much easier to simply ask for the information that you want. And the idea behind it is that once you get that response or a combination of response, you can use that information to populate notes, like the information that will be available for the next worker. So going back to our application, we are enhancing it bit by bit. Now at the request side of it, we enable a chatbot to assist the worker so that the user can ask questions, asking information like who's the person, was there a car, can't remember what the questions are, but primarily trying to dig deep into the context of that request. And as it does that, it receives different responses back, and all of those responses, the user will have the flexibility to select it and incorporate it into a corresponding note. And again, this is an example on how we can use that response back and generate something, but all that information is indexed and readily available, so it can be used for other purposes as well. And you may have seen a little bit of this in today's keynote with Mike Beckley. This is a plugin that is currently on being worked on. It's a combination between Pinecone and OpenAI. Not to dig too deep into the technical weeds, but Pinecone is a vector database that basically converts snippets of text into numerical values. And what it provides, allows us to do is use similarities between content so that we can query the database of large document libraries and look for relevant information. Why is this useful? As I mentioned before, there might be scenarios where that investigation will need to, users as part of that investigation may need to reference large libraries. I'm talking about hundreds of documents, each document with thousands of pages. It becomes a bit tedious, but this kind of plugin will help us query those large content, get the relevant information, and then leverage OpenAI to structure a response back from all those sources. So in this case, what we are achieving is, let's say that part of the investigation is to query or get information around legal codes or any legal information that may be required or may be needed as part of that assessment. Users can prompt questions against it and leverage AI to generate a response back. Not only will you get the response back, but also it will provide you the list of reference or official references that the information that you have extracted, you can use it as to back it up. Like, if I determine some legal code or some legal description, I can make the necessary references back to the source. So let's see in action. In this case, going back, you're already familiarized with this case. We've been working it extensively. We added this additional assistant, library assistant, and we have selected Virginia law library. So at this point, based on the case itself, the context of the case, the user might select, let's say, a possible offense, financial embezzlement, if I'm not mistaken, and it can ask the library to explain a little bit further. The reason might be I might have an idea what embezzlement is, but I want to have an official definition. So I asked the assistant for that official response, and it's generating, based on the different elements where financial embezzlement has been identified in the library, it will generate a response back to you. And at this point, it's consolidating the different references that it used to generate that response so that you can have it readily available. So now you have a full answer there, and also the references to back it up. You can visualize it, make sure that this is actually accurate. You can look for it, make sure that the actual term is there, the description of it actually supports the definition that was provided. And if you're happy with it, all of that information is well structured, so you can grab it, format it, and provide it as part of a note or a report, or whatever underlying need is needed for that case, you can build it. So just to confirm, I can go back to that case and visualize one of the references that was provided back as part of the response, and I'll get I'll get the detail on which title it was, basically the document, and even in one page. So that library has been added into the environment as well. So all the Virginia laws have been added to the site. They have been registered in Pinecone database, so I can always go to the actual document if you want to make sure that it's actually correct. I can download the document and navigate to the actual area where it was detected. Now, in this case, I think I will download it, and if I'm not mistaken, the actual page of reference was conveniently enough 1111. So as soon as I had that document, I can go directly to that page, and just to confirm that, in fact, that actual reference is there. So basically just giving me some assurance that it's actually accurate. Now, none of this is something that the worker will do. I'm just adding this kind of like to visualize the real process behind it. All of that information, all of that process was done for you by that plugin and integrating it into the solution. So finally, that tidal wave of correspondence is not going to go away. It's going to be always present, but it is very different from wanting to run away from it and feeling that you have it under control. And this is pretty much one of the highlights of what AI can do in terms of simplifying how you manage content, especially when content is something that is it takes quite a bit of time to manage. Now, with that, I'm done. I'm open for questions. If you have any questions.